lots of good things happening with that, but incredibly constricted today with all of the budget deficits that we're dealing with. So the bottom line is we give away $300 billion a year, but the problems we're trying to solve require massively more money. So how do we look at it differently? Well, if the why in the middle is how do you solve problems differently, the how you do it, in my opinion, is by using social enterprise, is by taking advantage of the opportunity to apply business models to problems and harnessing the capital markets and finding new sources of capital that may not have been available just for charity and government. So then it came down for us at the end, the what? Well, okay, so that's the why we're around. We have big problems to solve. The how is social enterprise. Now, how can we play a role in that? We already decided we weren't going to start our own social enterprise. So how can we support this industry? And what we came up with was something that I call a virtuous circle. And on the left side, it's all about capital. On the left side is human capital. On the right side is financial capital. And in the middle is how you end up connecting the two. Because as I really thought about it, how we're going to solve the big problems of the world is not by one killer app. There is not going to be the Facebook of poverty elimination that everybody signs up for, and all of a sudden in 3 years nobody in the world has issues with poverty. I'm convinced that the solutions are not going to come from the top down. They're going to come from the bottom up. They're going to come from hundreds of thousands and ultimately millions of women like the woman in Bayubu, Uganda, who are able to support their children with microfinance. They're going to come with thousands of brilliant innovations that come from people applying business models to solutions, failing, recalibrating, ready, fire, aim, finding solutions. So how do we support that? Well, I looked at it as an entrepreneur, and I stepped back and said, okay, I had the good fortune to be able to start a business that grew and was successful. How did we get there? What were the dynamics that we had? And it ended up being really two things. It was human capital. We had great people. We were able to go out and hire really smart people that were committed and talented, and financial capital. We had investors that were willing to back us and provide us with the resources to grow our business. Well, those are the two biggest challenges today that face the world of social enterprise. It's how do you find the right people, equip them and motivate and inspire them to get into this space and come up with brilliant ideas, and then how do you provide them with the financial capital, the investments, to be actually able to take those ideas and turn them into something that can grow to a social enterprise large enough that it actually impacts a number of lives. And as we got further into that, we realized a couple of things. One was that there was no connectivity at all between financial capital and investment capital. It was almost as if the social entrepreneurs were over on the left side of the room speaking one language, the investors were over on the right side of the room speaking another language. So we started with the social capital, and that's really what got us originally, is I got excited about what Jerry and Spencer and the team are doing here at the Global Center. To me, it was all about equipping the next generation of social entrepreneurs. So today, in addition to the core work we do here at the Global Center, we're partners with an organization, Ashoka, which is on 100 college campuses around the country. And the really cool thing about that is we just had a conference, the Ashoka U Exchange, which I know a couple of you attended, down in Phoenix in February. 100 campuses were there, 500 people in total. And I know he's going to blush when I tell him this, but when people found out I was from the University of Pacific, there was one thing they asked me: where is this Jerry Hildebrand and how can I meet him? What was really cool for me is these were schools. This was not a collection of second-rate universities from around the country. This was Harvard, Duke, Columbia, Tulane, Arizona State, Middlebury, Babson. And what we've created here at Pacific was something that they all wanted to learn more about, particularly the experiential programs that we have, the Ambassador Program, the CGIU connection, etc. So as I looked at it, I've been really proud of what we've done here over the last 6 years in really equipping the next generation of social entrepreneurs to take really meaningful, powerful roles as leaders in this space. But I realized one thing about 9 months ago, and that is that there was a whole generation that I hadn't yet figured out how to solve. And that's what I call the Encore generation. And that's basically old people like me. There's 100 million Americans today between the ages of 45 and 70. It's the baby boomer plus generation, the biggest block of population in the U.S. I've recently become associated with a group called Encore.org that's really putting out this new proposition that there's a middle ground between middle age and old age. And that middle ground is something they're calling Encore. The period at which you're too young to retire, you've still got a lot left, but you're maybe looking to do something different than you had done in the first half of your life. And it resonated with me for two reasons. One, because that's exactly where I've been, in this position where I wanted to repivot and find a new second half adventure, best in the world, best for the world. It also resonated with me because not a week goes by where I don't talk to somebody who's involved in that same journey, who's heard about some of the things that I've been doing and says, can you help me? Can you help me? Can we sit down for lunch or breakfast? Can we walk through? Is there some way that, how can I pivot from here to here? And what I realized is, as much as our foundation, we think, is doing some really great work with this generation, with all the power and enthusiasm and energy and passion and brilliance you have, we were missing a whole nother generation. So we've now taken on a partnership with Encore.org to figure out how do we catalyze this generation of Encore. And part of it is to begin with a redefinition of the word work. So I come out of the financial services business, right? I come out of the financial advice business. That's my business. We had 6,000 advisors. We had hundreds of thousands of clients around the country. So I've been in a lot of conversations with people about what it means to retire. And the traditional financial advisor is still operating in a 1950s assumption, which is you're going to work until a certain age, and I'm going to figure out as your advisor how much money you need at that age to retire. And then at that point, you can trade in your job for retirement. Yay! Right? Black socks on the beach. You can do whatever you want to do. What's interesting, in my grandparents' era, when folks lived to an average age of maybe 64 and retired, my grandfather retired at 58, people had not a long life expectancy ahead of them. And most people had very rigorous jobs. So in many cases, they retired because work was really hard. And they were no longer physically able to do it, and they deserved a rest for the last 6 or 8 or 10 years of their life in retirement. Well, today life is different. We work with our brains typically, and not our hands and backs. And so what we're finding is there's this whole generation of people that are in their 40s, late 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, who are looking at having dozens, if not 20, 30 productive years left in life, and they want to do something in this same sector. So here's what's interesting. I'm now talking to groups. I'm talking to groups that look a lot like this, except they all have gray hair. I'm talking to groups that are passionate about wanting to change the world, as passionate as you guys are, but they're 30 years older than you. But they still feel young enough that they've got 20 or 30 years ahead of them, and they want to make that 20 or 30 years really work. Now, if we think about Encore, there's no better example to me of an inspiration of somebody that's had an Encore career than this fella here in the orange sweater. We celebrated in February his big 7-0 with that wonderful video that so many of you were involved in putting together. And I just remember, Jerry, when you retired 6 years ago from Catalysis, I think that I was on the board at the time of this microfinance fund. I think we took a bet. Because I remember the bet was like the over and under of how many weeks it would be before you found another full-time job that was doing something really passionate and inspiring. It didn't take long. But there's a beautiful thing happening in that space. And so we're working with universities today on programs for executive education. Because if you think about it, how do you equip people for the second half of your life? Well, maybe you equip the same way you did for the first half. You provide a university curriculum that lets them explore certain things, take some experiential learning, take some coursework, and figure out where they want to go. And we're also working with financial advisors. And as I talk to financial advisors now, I've come up with a new definition of work which seems to resonate with people. So I'll sit down with a group of financial advisors and say, how many of your clients do you feel want to work for the rest of their lives? Nobody raises their hand. I said, what if I redefine work? What if I redefine the word work as an engagement that brings value to others and meaning to you? How many of your clients would ever want to stop working? Everybody says, no, geez, I want to. If that's how you're going to define work, then why would I ever want to stop with an engagement that brings value to others and meaning to me? Well, that's what I'm looking to do within the financial advisory community, is start to think about how do you redefine work, whether it's paid or unpaid or partially paid. That doesn't matter. It's all about finding meaning and value. So I think the new retirement for the 50-plus generation is going to actually move from our grandfather's days of freedom from work to a new concept of freedom to work, but to work on your terms for things that are important to you, for things that give value to others and meaning to you. Now, how does that affect you guys here? Well, I think there's an amazing multi-generational connection that's being made. We're trying to make it at a global conference that we sponsor called the Opportunity Collaboration, where we bring together 300 global leaders, multi-sectoral, 28 countries.